Now we're going to talk about the 21 flag game. This is a game I've always found very interesting. I saw it long ago as a child, and I was surprised to see this when the television series Survivor came on the air. I believe it was in season 5, the one that was filmed in Thailand. And I say season 5, they're already up to, I believe, season 40 or so right now. But back in season 5, they used the 21 flags game when the survivors, the people who were uh, stranded in some particular tropical location, uh, were divided up into two teams. And they had 21 flags placed on the beach all together. And the teams alternated. Each team was told they could take exactly 1, 2, or 3 flags. The winning team would be the team that takes the last flag. So if you know anything about Survivor, and don't worry if you don't know about this, I'll describe how this works. These people have been stranded there on the beach. This was over a week into the game, or approximately a week into the game at this point, and they hadn't had much food, and they're all struggling with things. So it's hard to really concentrate very well. One team, the first team, we'll call it Team A in Survivor, chose to pick 2 flags. Team B chose to pick 2 flags, so we're down to 17. Then Team A chose 2 flags again, down to about 15, down to 15 now. Then they alternated. Team B took 1 flag, Team A took 1 flag, and it kept going. I'll talk about how it ended in a minute. Now, I'll tell you why I was very interested. I always have loved the TV show Survivor, and in this particular season of Survivor, there was one young woman who they mentioned in the opening episode where they talk about the different contestants. They mentioned that she was a graduate of UC Berkeley, which is my alma mater. So of course I was rooting for her and her team at this point. This was before they merged the teams. And I thought she'd do very well. And of course, this is a purely intellectual game. Many of the challenges they have on Survivor, in fact, most of the challenges involve some sort of physical thing, but this was a purely intellectual challenge. I thought she should do great, and I'm rooting for her team. She was on what I've been calling Team A, the team to go first. And it was clear when you're watching the episode that she's kind of taking charge, leading the team, telling them what to do. So they start out, as I said, 2 flags for Team A, 2 for B, 2 for A, 1 for B, 1 for A, 1 for B. I forget the exact sequence. It gets down to 9 flags left, and it's Team A's turn. And I believe at this point, Team A decided to pick 3 flags, bringing it down to 6. And then Team B finally figured out what was going on. They picked 2 flags to leave it with 4. Team A is then in trouble. Why? With 4 flags left, they can pick 1, 2, or 3, but whatever they pick, Team B will pick all of the remaining flags and win the game. So Team B won. And then if you know Survivor, you know what happens with the losing team is that they have to go to tribal council and vote somebody off. And of course, the person voted off was the person I had been rooting for, who led her team directly into a defeat in the challenge. So much for rooting for UC Berkeley alums. Anyway, let's talk about how to actually play the game properly. What turns out to be very useful is to see that at the end it was kind of obvious what to do. When there were 6 flags left and Team B got to make a choice, they brought it down to 4, and you could see in the show they actually had figured things out. They knew that leaving it at 4 would be a good idea. Why? Because then whatever Team A does, Team B can win from that position. And so the analysis of how to play depends on what we consider winning positions and losing positions. And we're going to formalize this with the idea in a combinatorial game of a P position. A P position is a win for the previous, that's why it's called P, player. Now, if you're playing the game, you want to create a move that leaves it in a P position, because when you give it to the other team, you're now the previous player and you want them to deal with a P position. The opposite of a P position is what we'll call an N position. which is a win for the next player. If you're the one who's about to move, you're hoping you're in what's called an end position, because that's a win for you if you play correctly. And now how can you tell which positions are P positions and which positions are N positions? Well, here are all the numbers of flags, 1 through 21. And I really should have put a 0 in there, so I'm going to put that in here. If there's a 0 there, that's what we'll call a P position. So step 1 here is label every terminal position as a P position. 0 flags left, all the flags are taken, that's what we call a terminal position. Anytime there's at least one flag there, a player can move. So 0 flags is a terminal position, that's a P position. The previous player is the one who now has already won the game. They're the one, that other player is the one who played the last move. But what does that tell you? That tells you if there are 1, 2, or 3 flags left, those are all winning moves for the next player, because the next player to play will either play 1 if it's 1, play 2 if it's 2, or play 3 if it's 3, and leave the other team in a P position. So that's step 2. We label every position that can reach a P position in one move. We label that an N position. And the only ones that can get to this P position in one move are 1, 2, or 3 flags left. I should write this as labeling the number of flags left. Now, what if there are 4 flags left? Well, that's going to be a P position. Why? Because every allowable move, and I'll write those here, these are the allowable moves, are to get to 3, 2, or 1 by taking 1, 2, or 3 flags. Every allowable move leaves the other player in an N position. Whatever you do, if you're faced with 4 flags, you're leaving the other player a winning position, an N position. So we call that a P position. What can we then say about 5, 6, and 7? Well, these are all N positions, because they all can, in a single move, get to a P position. So step 3 says find those positions whose only moves are to N positions. That's this one here, number 4, and we label that as a P position. If no matter what you do, you leave the other player a winning position, then it's obviously a bad position for you. It's a win for that previous player. We call it a P position. And we can keep going from there. What if there are 8 flags? Well, the only allowable moves are 1, 2, or 3. Those are all N positions, so that's a P position. What about 9? There is a move to get to a P position, so it's called an N. 10, there is a move, 2 flags. 11, there is a move, 3 flags. 12, all moves go to N, so this is a P. And you can keep going like that. And label them like this. So what does this say about the game? Well, I should mention, if no new P positions were found in step 3, we just stop. Otherwise, we just keep repeating. That's what I was doing. And we've labeled all possible positions. 21, which was the way things started, is an N position. That means the next player to move, or the next team to move, can win. So in this game, Team A should have been able to win. That was the team I was rooting for. And yet what they did was they took 2. They went to here, leaving the other team in an N position. Of course, the other team went there to 17, leaving Team A in an N position. And then Team A did it was another 2 that went to there, left Team B in a winning position. And then they just did some other silly things like that. I think they went from 12, I think, down to 9, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, Team A, which I was rooting for, had a winning position with 9 flags left. But the player I was rooting for told her team to take 3, which is a losing move. A winning move is just to get to a P. The correct move would have been to take 1 flag, whereas instead the person took 3 flags, or their team took 3 flags. And from that point, the team took 2 flags to get to 4 and assured themselves the win. So this is how things worked out on Survivor. Remember, they were struggling under difficult physical circumstances, so maybe they weren't thinking right. But a simple analysis shows that these are the P positions and the others are N positions. Now, is there an obvious pattern to the P positions? I think all of you can see this at this point. All the multiples of 4 in this particular game are P positions. Everything else is an N position. Is that true in a larger flag game where we start with, say, 721 flags? The answer is yes. One can prove, but using a simple induction argument, that no matter how many flags you start with, any number of flags that's a multiple of 4 is a P position. All of the others are N positions. So as long as the starting position is not a multiple of 4, you can take 1, 2, or 3 flags and leave a multiple of 4, and then you can always just maintain that. Always leave your opponent a multiple of 4, whittling down the number of flags all the way to 0, no matter how big a number of flags you start with.